Good evening and welcome to Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Gene Preuss with the League of Women Voters of Houston. And with us tonight we have two very special guests. And the first one here in studio is Annie Benefield. And Annie, thank you for being on. You're our board president for the League of Women Voters here in Houston. And we're doing a couple of things. We want to do a New Year's show. I mean, we're a month into the new year, but it is still a new year. I still feel that it's new, right? The year is still new. But also, we want to talk about the league and what the league has done this past year. And we also want to talk about Black History Month because we are celebrating that now today. It is Groundhog Day too, but we've got enough on the table as it is, and we'll talk about that later on. So welcome. Thank you very much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, Gene, for inviting me. It is so exciting to be here tonight, especially with it being Black History Month, as well as to talk about the League of Women Voters. It's my passion, my full-time job right now, and so I'm really excited about that.
So I do want to talk about the league and what has been going on. We've seen a lot of changes. There's been a lot of exciting movement on the league. So let's tell people a little bit about the league and start off by telling us how you got involved in the league. You're the president right now until June. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about the league and what we've been doing. And you've done this before, so you're always a great cheerleader. You are the president after all. So what did we do in 2022? Looking back, what were some of the successes?
2022 was absolutely amazing and phenomenal for the League of Women Voters, especially after COVID. Not saying COVID was over in 2022, but several big things happened. The League of Women Voters got a grant from the Houston Endowment, which gave us the ability to build capacity and to hire an executive director, and for building out our capacity in terms of organizational structure. We've always been a reputational organization. The League is 102, almost 103 years old, and that we've just based on our laurels in terms of people being hardworking, conscientious, dedicated volunteers that help, the glue that holds the organization together for the most part. But now, all of a sudden, we were going to have some money to help us see a bigger picture and build a bigger vision. And so as a result of that, that's one of the major things that happened. The second thing is that the Houston Chronicle became a major partner with the League of Women Voters by printing the Voters Guide and putting it on their digital platform in terms of accessing all of the people that it has distribution. That was so exciting, and they're going to do that for the League of Women Voters until 2024, to the general election in 2024. So that was major. They printed in the November 2022 election 32,000 copies. And we were able to put the Voters Guide in libraries and schools, colleges and universities and community centers all across Houston and Harris County so people could have access to it. And in addition to that, we did some social media advertising in the various languages because we had it digitally on our website the Voters Guide was digitally in Chinese, Vietnamese, English, of course, and Spanish. And so trying to expand access to fact-based, nonpartisan information is one of the things that we do best. And so the Voters Guide is our signature work in terms of the League, because the League's mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. So part of the empowerment of voters is registration and then voter education, and that's where the Voters Guide comes in.
You know, the thing about the Voters Guide is that everybody, and wherever you go, people know the League does a Voters Guide.
Absolutely.
When I was a kid in my hometown, one of the things I remember is getting those voter guides. And I think that is one of the things that first got me started being interested in politics, was that when I was a little kid, I could get those voters guides in my hometown and read what the candidates were saying that they were going to do and what they were making, the promises they were making. And I also lived not far from a congressman in our area of town. And So this idea, I was kind of immersed in politics. It seems like at an early age, and I always remember when I was in college, those voters guides are coming out. I would go to the convenience store or wherever they put them when I was going to college, where I went to college. They would stick them, but that is one of the earliest things I knew about the League of Women Voters was their voters guides. And when you talk to people today, that is what they remember. That is what they know about the League. And we're going to talk to Katie, the new executive director, a little bit later on this evening. And we're going to talk about some of the other things that the League does. But if people know us for nothing else, it's for the voters' guides.
This is our signature contribution. Fact-based, nonpartisan. We use the candidates' exact wordings in response to the questions. And we have a team of people who work really hard. Virginia Johnson and Jackie Alford are the co-chairs of that Voters Guide Committee, and they do an absolutely phenomenal job and they have volunteers who work with them in terms of calling the candidates if they have not responded through our initial emails and following up and proofreading and making sure that we get it right, that everything is accurate before it goes out. And this year, it was 82 pages because some transformational things have happened. It was 82 pages because there was over 200 plus candidate who was on the ballot. I mean, that was huge.
Right. Yeah, they're really big. Yeah, and you think about it that this coming election, this year, we're going to elect a whole new slate of city council members.
Yes.
And that is going to be huge. So we have in Houston, those voters' guides are massive. And I remember when the discussion was, we're going to go to digital as opposed to just paper. And that was a surprise for a lot of people because we'd been paper for so long. But I think it's fantastic that we're teaming up now with the Chronicle.
Absolutely. That is one of the great partnerships. I've been working on it for like several years, and it finally came into fruition in June of last year that we met with them, and they were like on board. The new publisher, Nancy Myers, came on board, and Maria Reeves, who's the executive editor. They were very excited about this opportunity, the partnership, in terms of getting information out, in terms of the local community, because it is important as a paper in a local community for people to have ready access to information that they could trust. And the League's reputation as a nonpartisan civic organization that engages in the political process in this way added impetus to what they were trying to do and accomplish too as a newspaper. So I think it was a great partnership relationship, and I hope it's even ongoing. We have an agreement with them to 2024, but I can see this as being futuristically a very important partnership that the League can have even into the future.
So besides the Houston Endowment Grant, which was big, a big thing. The fact that we were able to hire an executive director for the first time,
yes,
right, in the League's history here in Houston, and the partnership with the Chronicle on the voters' guides. What are some of the other successes? Because I know there are more than just that. Right, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That
was yes. We actually reached out and had a partnership with some other organizations like the Divine Nine, the Black sororities and fraternities in the community. We reached out and partnered with the NAACP. The Defenders Network was very much involved with the League with regard to the Get Out the Vote rally that we did on October 22nd with Metro. It's an ongoing partnership that the League has with Metro, that they offered free rides to the poll for an entire week during early voting. That was part of the collaborative effort, but we've partnered with them systematically over the years for elections, and they usually offer a free ride to the poll on election day and once the Saturday during early voting, but this time they actually did it for an entire week, which was major in terms of people getting ready access to transportation to get to the polling location. That was just a couple of the things. We applied for some other grants, some smaller than the Houston Endowment Grant, and we got some of those. We were invited back into the MOCAM Arena for the naturalization ceremonies. That was one of the major things. Before COVID, We only did, in 2020, we only did 2 ceremonies, January and February that year before it was shut down. And so one of the things that happened, we had registered 4,500 voters in January and February, and we were on target to exceed 30,000 if things had continued as they were. But then we were shut down. But one of the things that we continued to work with USCIS by delivering voter registration cards to them, so when they resumed doing the smaller, more intimate ceremonies, to make sure adhering to COVID restrictions, not in the arena in Mokemo, but in their office setting, that we supplied them with over 60,000 voter registration cards to put in the packet so those individuals would have access to voter registration, even if the league, and we put a beautiful little note on there letting them know, congratulations, we're so excited. If you want additional information about voting and political participation, here is where you go to our website to find out information about the election process. So we've tried, they worked collaboratively. USCIS and the federal court system have worked collaboratively with us in terms of inviting us back. And so we were invited back in June of last year. We had over 9,000 registered new citizens registered. And sometimes the number of people coming in, the applicants come from 115 to 124 different countries. So it's so exciting meeting and engaging and talking to them to find out how, the process, how long did it take. And USCIS and all of the judges are so cooperative in this environmental setting. They talk about voting and how important it is to engage in the political process. So those are just some of the things. We built out a network of partnerships with other organizations, like Houston in Action is an umbrella organization with lots of other organizations who meet and be part of that. I'm part of the steering committee. It's the Houston Public Library, Harris County Public Library, the Houston Area Urban League, the NAACP. These are just some of the people. And for the first time, the league actually got involved in to get out the vote. So we did a Get Out the Vote rally in Emancipation Park with a series of partners with Texas Children's Hospital was one of the partners, the Defenders Network, which is a Black newspaper here in the community, with Sonny Messiah Giles, instrumental, publicizing, educating people about it. And we were able to do, because of the grant as well, we were able to do more marketing tailored specifically to the different diverse communities in terms of the Chinese, the AAPI community, as well as the Hispanic community about the Voter's Guide in terms of social media ads. And so that was, and I did a radio interview for the Vietnamese radio, telling them about the Voter's Guides and access to the Voter's Guide on our webpage so they could get the digital version. And the continued part of having the print version is that you can take paper into a polling location, but you can't take your phone in. And so having the paper copy of the Voter's Guide is critical to individuals, especially elderly people and young people alike, because Harris County had one of the longest ballots. And so there was no way you were going to remember all the candidates or whatever. So you mark your ballot, take it in, and use that.
It was a long ballot. I was hoping that we were going to take a break in the middle of it because it was so long. Oh. Like I said, I'm going to have lunch, and then I'll be back.
No, that is... Yeah.
So that is a tremendous amount of work. And as you were saying, this has really been your full-time job, and it's a volunteer position.
Yes, it is a full-time job, even though it's a volunteer position. The League of Women Voters has always been very fortunate to have committed, active community people involved in the community and dedicated volunteers, especially for the naturalization ceremony. They've refined the process since COVID. It's different. But we have committed people that we can call them, like sometimes we didn't get the notification that we could come until sometimes 5 days before. And we were able to organize and get a sufficient amount of volunteers to show up and be there to do the registration, say for 1,800 or 2,000 citizens. So the League's reputation as a civic, nonpartisan organization, we don't endorse or support any political candidate or political party. We want people to engage and participate in the political process because voting is essential in a democratic system. That is the way the citizens have an impact. That is the way that they have their voices heard. And that doesn't mean you're going to win. Your candidate is going to win or your party is going to win, but at least you had a chance to weigh in and have a say.
Well, one of the things I always say, and you were a political science professor, so I'm sure you said many things the same message to students, is that I don't care how you vote. I mean, I do. But it's not my business to tell you how to vote or which candidates to vote for, but the fact that you do vote.
Absolutely.
My mom always used to tell me when I was growing up, she goes, son, if everybody had the same opinions and beliefs that you did, think of how boring the world would be, right? And this is one of the things, is that in the world that we live in, I learn from people with different opinions than me. I learn with people with different beliefs. And sometimes I change my beliefs because, maybe they're right about something that I hadn't thought about before. And if we don't all participate, all of us who can participate in the voting process, then all we're going to see is a very narrow definition of what it means to be an American, what it means to govern, what it means to lead, and what it means to serve the people. And so we need that other input. We need that other side or other sides.
Yes.
And so I may not agree with you, but I certainly want to hear what you have to say or to have you vote, because maybe I'm wrong.
That is true. And policy changes and people perspective changes. I think in order to definitively know that you have a solid position on an issue, you need to be able to engage with people who have an opposing point of view, to listen to the information. Because sometimes that gut instinct or whatever, and you immediately react to something without having all the information, you don't know what you don't know oftentimes. And so as a result of that, having a dialogue and a discussion. And part of the democratic process is that an election is the means by which you give your government legitimacy by participating. That is what the representative of the people. And so that representative of all people, irrespective if their views are different than you, once you're elected from a district that has 600,000 to 700,000 people, it is your responsibility as a legislator to ensure that you're reflecting and representing the interest of the people who are your constituents, not just the people who voted for you, but all of the people in that particular community from where you are. And so for the greater good, I think John Stuart Mill talked about Essay on Liberty in terms of having the opportunity to engage and participate and speak, to put out ideas, that have a livelier discussion about politics in the political sphere, makes our democratic system and First Amendment rights in the Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom to speak and to engage and to assemble. Those are fundamental rights in the constitutional process.
And one of the things that I really see, because we, as part of the league and with Houston Media Source, we not only do this show, but we do conversations with the candidates during the election cycle, and many of our rising stars and our board members also interview candidates. And it's to see people who are willing to put their names out there and themselves out in the public to say, here are my ideas, here's what I believe, here's how I think things should be and what I would like to do. And we vote on them. And I can say almost every person that we've talked to, and when I read the voters' guides, the same thing, is that it's exactly as you're saying. They have the greater good in mind. It's people who really want to do what's right for Houston. Now, we may not agree on how that is.
Yes.
Or it's Houston, the state, or the county, or the nation. We may not agree on how that is, but the fact that these are people who are willing to put themselves out there and be vulnerable.
And seek elective office, because this is a difficult and very challenging process to put yourself out there and to be at the forefront. And sometimes you have some creative ideas that others are not part of. And so you get a chance to put them out there and see how that idea or ideas, how they are actually entertained by the public. And they may not the public may not come along with you the first time around, but maybe the second time around or the third time. So being willing to do it consistently, to be able to advocate. And that doesn't mean everybody in terms of elective office. I think I was listening the other day and they were saying Harry Truman said that all readers will not be politicians, but all political leaders need to be readers. So they need to know about the discourse. They need to engage in the intellectual gathering of information and knowledge. And so reading the crowd, reading the public, reading your constituents, and offering solutions to problems, because ultimately I think all American citizens simply want things that are problematic to be resolved in some kind of way, peacefully and amicably among political leaders in the political discourse, and that they can exchange ideas. I used to always tell my students when I was teaching at Lone Star College, Tomball, that profanity is the language of the ignorant, so you shouldn't have to use profanity to explain or express your point of view. You should be able to use the language and the words that are part of normal political discourse to be able to put your point of view out there. And so I still believe that wholeheartedly, that the political discourse should entail civility. I think that's very much should be part of the discourse.
So I want to get to, let's talk about you now. We've just kind of scratched the surface on what the league does. And it seems like it always goes deeper, and there's always many more things to talk about. But listening to you talk about what you say to your students and your beliefs on what it means to be a good citizen and to have a good government. What was it that got you involved in the league?
Well, a colleague of mine at the college, Nancy Crowell, she's on the board for the league, the vice president of voter services. She invited me to a naturalization ceremony. I was already a member of the National League, but she invited me to a naturalization ceremony. I felt so engaged in the process. I quite literally had chill bumps, and I was like, this is so exciting, seeing the faces and the enthusiasm and the zest and the zeal that they were demonstrating in terms of this coming a new citizen, how exciting it was. I was like, that sold me. I continued to go. So I volunteered in terms of doing that for over 20 plus years now, because I came to Lone Star College in 1998, the fall of 1998. And I think she invited me somewhere in the fall of 98 or 99. And I've consistently, over the 20 plus years, continued to do that, to drive in some days, go to the naturalization ceremony, and then go to the college, because I didn't usually have classes on that day, and go to work afterward, because I felt being civically engaged was very important in that process. So that was my beginning point in terms of getting involved with the league. I did that for years and years, and then in 2012, someone reached out to me and say, give us your information, provide us with your information. We're looking for board of director members so you can be more engaged if you're interested in being more engaged with the league and the activities of the league. And before that, I even went to Austin for Lobby Day with some of the league members. Before that, they were going, and I said, well, of course I'll go along, because so I went along with that. So in 2012, I actually was asked to put my name forward and to be nominated to serve on the board. So I served on the board. So I served on the board of directors. I served on the nominating committees at 2 different intervals in looking for candidates who would be ideally serve in terms of the league. I became secretary, and then I became vice president of voter services, now president. Not saying that's ultimately how never did I expect that I would ever be president of the League of Women Voters. That was not my expectation. That was my desire. I just simply was one of those people who wanted to be civically engaged and involved in educating voters, because one of the parts of that was doing speaking engagement, going out, talking to groups. And that was hard during COVID, but I think I did quite a few Zoom meetings to various groups across the county, Harris County and the Houston area, during that time period.
So you are now the president, and it's meaningful that it is Black History Month, because the League of Women Voters throughout history hasn't always had people of color in the top leadership positions. There is a very and sad because of the time that during the 1920s, when the League was marching for women's suffrage, that black women voters wanted to get involved and said, we want to come to Washington and march. And because there were so many Southerners and who would have looked down upon that, they were asked not to participate.
Yeah.
So you're the first person of color in the Houston League to be president,
Yes.
right? And so how does that mean for you?
Well, it means that in 102 years, things can change. It might take a while, but ultimately, because the League of Women Voters of Houston has been primarily considered upper middle class white women organization. But I got involved, as I said, back on the board in 2012, but was involved in activities before that time period. And that in the 60s and 70s, I was looking at the League's history here, and it said we would not, if women of color want to join, we will allow them to join, but we will not actively recruit them. And so because of the suffragist movement and wanting to get the right to vote, that in Southern women and the segregation and the racist attitudes in terms of the South, they said, we will not, you can't be here, you can't be part of the race. It's kind of interesting because it talks about Ida B. Wells, that she was told when she got there that as a black woman, she wasn't going to be able to march up front with the Illinois delegation. And she said, oh, no, that's not the way it's going to work. So she was persistent. And that women from Howard University, a whole group of young women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, actually marched in that march in Washington, D.C. They said they wanted to be more civically engaged. They wanted to change things in society. And so they came forward and participated in that march. I feel so honored, Jean, to be president of the League of Women Voters to be in that 102-year history, that I'm the first woman of color. I feel honored that it shows that things have changed. It might take a while for things to change, but the idea that the board members and the membership have believed and supported this effort wholeheartedly, I feel like things have changed and it's different. And if you look at the League of Women Voters, the board of directors, we have a very diverse board. I mean, we have that Harris County and Houston is a very diverse community. Our board is reflective of that diversity now. And that is wonderful. I think that shows that the organization has made tremendous strides and that we are moving forward in the 21st century, that if we're going to lead the impetus for voting rights and advocate for voting rights and empowering voters and defending democracy, the only way that you can defend democracy is that you have to be representative and reflective of the community in which you serve. That is the only way. And with the change in demographic nationally, state and locally, that is a good thing that the League can actually say that. It is kind of sad though. There's a certain amount of sadness that I would say in 102 years, that it took 102 years. But it's kind of interesting because my mom always told me, said, that's what's meant for you is for you, only can anybody take it away from you. So maybe it was just that I was not tooting my own horn by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe it was meant that I was to be that person that would facilitate that transition and be that person, that voice.
Well, you're the right person at the right time. So thank you very much. I tell you what, let's talk with Katie Shumway, who is our new executive director. And she wasn't able to be with us here tonight, so I recorded yesterday an interview with her, and we're going to show that now. And when we come back, there are some things that I want us to be aware of. I want us to tell you about. Coming up, we've got what used to be called Repast. We're planning that in the business.
Yes.
It's got a new name, and stick around. And right after we talk to Katie, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Tonight, we have with us a very special guest, Katie Campbell Shumway. Welcome to Public Affairs Public Access. Thank you for being on. Now, you've been on before other League shows. You were one of the people who volunteered. We recruited to help us do some conversations with the candidates in the past. So let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the league. I mean, you're not a stranger. So let's talk about how you first got involved with the League of Women Voters.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to talk to everybody about the league and the important efforts that we're working on. And so today I just will give you my little history. So a while ago, I actually attended an annual meeting with the league. And during that time, I raised my hand and asked questions about the finances. And I was really just a volunteer at that point. I had just been a member and was interested in what the league had to offer. And again, I raised my hand and asked questions, and then I was immediately recruited to join the Budget and Finance Committee. And from then, I really increased my involvement really year after year, where I was on the Budget Planning Committee and handled some of our budget planning, and then eventually became the board treasurer for about 2 years, and really oversaw some really strong financial growth in the organization, and really made sure that we were having a robust funding strategy and really passing budgets that were always in the green, which was really nice, and really oversaw a lot of growth over time. And then when the position for executive director came to be, I was really interested because I had spent a lot of time volunteering, again, with the different shows that we've hosted for interviews. I've done a lot of voters guide work, and then also voter registration, and been out boots on the ground as much as I've been able to, and then really have increased involvement. And then when the position opened, and was really excited to be accepted, and with open arms. It's been really fun and fulfilling, and it's something that every day I get excited about doing. And I think anybody who is lucky enough to have a job like that is really set themselves up for a good life. So it's been really nice so far.
Well, having an executive director is really new for the Houston League of Women Voters. We've not had one before. And as you were kind of alluding to in your introduction there, that, a lot of times in organizations like the Houston League of Women Voters, you volunteer, you believe in the role, and before you know it, you're in charge of something, right? So you've been active. What is it about the league that first caught your attention? How did Katie get involved with the league? You were a rising star at one point, weren't you?
Yep, I was a rising star. I've always really enjoyed civic engagement, nonprofit sector. Previously, I held a position with the Houston Arboretum and Nature Center, and was there for 8.5 years, and really involved in lots of different volunteer efforts and different organizations around the city. But I really always came back to the league. And I think part of it is because I remember very vividly my mom taking me to polling locations even before I was a voting age. My birthday is November 7th. So I've had a lot of birthdays around elections. And so just having kind of like a special attention to that time of year is really unique, kind of growing up with that. And I've barely missed the cusp of some big elections, and then been really excited about the next ones that I've been involved in. And then the people that you really interact with, I think the league has a very good, strong history of being approachable. And so when you're tabling different outreach events, people are excited to come and talk to you and ask questions, and having that dialogue be kind of a safe place for people to really understand different laws, different regulations, different really strategies to have the best experience out of voting location, is really been interesting to be a part of on the volunteer side. And I think it kind of sets the league apart in some ways, because of the interactions you get from the public, and then the people who are sitting beside you who are also volunteering, the type of people who spend their Saturday afternoons registering people to vote, really care about their communities, really care about the country, really care about their neighborhoods. And it's really a kind of a different attitude that you see from some, social media or news stories and things like that. Because whenever you're really in front of folks, you realize that the care and the devotion to your communities are all really similar. And that's really a refreshing experience. So I was born in Austin, and then I actually grew up in Idaho until I was 16. My dad's family's from Idaho. My mom's family's from Texas. And so then we had moved when I was 16 to Alvin, Texas. So that's south of Houston. And then I went to university in Georgetown and Southwestern University, just north of Austin. And then right after graduation, came back to Houston. I really craved the city life, but I do sometimes miss and love the nature aspect. I think that's what drew me initially to the Arboretum, is having that nature that I grew up with in Idaho and being kind of in a rural space. So I really kind of experienced all sorts of different environments where it's been rural, it's been city, I now live in a suburb. And so really having that kind of different living situation has been really, really nice.
So I can remember a time when Georgetown was very rural and kind of out in the middle of, you'd leave Austin, drive out in the country for a while, and then you'd hit Georgetown. Today, it's part of a bigger metroplex. You've got Dell out there and all of these communities. So it's really kind of an urban place now. But that was a great place to go to school and to be around, and you're kind of in the heart of everything in that Georgetown area. So I can kind of see how you can kind of like that city life a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always amazed by the cityscape of Houston because it's so foreign to me. Growing up, it was really, we were in the country with pastures and always had animals and farms and different things like that. But it always takes me by surprise, the skyline, and just imagining all those people and all those different lives that are in the Houston area. It's really impactful.
Interesting about your growing up background is that, being born around in the election season and how that can affect someone. Were you a political science major? Did you major in an area related to politics then?
Yep. I was a political science major, double major with environmental studies as well. I had initial kind of ideas of wanting to go to law school, but I always had the dream of kind of public policy, public service, not necessarily public office. That kind of front-facing position is really, I think it might be a little too sensitive for that. But on the back end, the operations person, I'm the person you want on your team for that. But the kind of public sphere is something I've always loved, with government, with nonprofits and things like that. And so the political science really has been with me for a long time. I was in debate in high school and dabbled in theater, wasn't very good at it, but in debate I really enjoyed it. And then again in college, just really took a ton of poli-sci courses and a lot of environmental studies.
So if somebody is watching the show or listening to the show and they hear your background and some of your interests, what would you say to somebody who says, well, maybe I want to get involved with the League of Women Voters myself? What would you tell them to do?
I would say the first thing to do is to take a look at our website and look at the different programs and different events and different initiatives that the League does, and figure out what really speaks to you. It could be that you're really passionate about new citizens and about immigration and about the kind of American dream of becoming a naturalized citizen. And that's where you would want to be involved in the naturalization ceremonies. Or perhaps you're really excited about bringing in different community members and different organizations. You're involved with this great literacy organization or this really interesting civic communities area in your part of town, and you want them to get involved in the league. There's a way for strategic partnerships to come into play. If you really love to speak for, like you're a really amazing speaker and you really care about democracy and care about the communities, then we have speaking opportunities where you can learn how to speak on behalf of the league and help us really spread our message. So really look to see what part of our organization stands out, and then begin volunteering. You know, I think having a full-time staff person really helps to delegate some of these volunteer efforts in a really meaningful way. And so we're hoping that our volunteer program really becomes even more robust. Really, you know, we've done an amazing job on voter registration and outreach, but we want to expand in getting out the vote and then also targeting specific communities that we may have not had the resources to reach out to in the past. And so there's a lot of really strong opportunities for growth for us, and we need support in those areas. And so volunteering is really the best way to get involved.
That if they've not been to our website, it's lwvhouston.org, lwvhouston.org. And there are many of the opportunities of which you were just speaking that are presented on that page, and places to get involved and people to reach out. And so you were a Rising Star, and let's tell the people a little bit about that program and about the how that got you maybe seeking more opportunities within the league.
Yeah, the Rising Stars program is really meant to provide some guidance, some expertise, some encouragement for people who want to be involved in the civic sphere. And by the ways that we do that for the league is hosting several kind of targeted events and targeted conversations around different things related to the election, related to city government, and topics that are really driven by the Rising Stars. What are they interested in? What's important to them? What kind of questions do they have? And so if you're really interested in learning how an election is run, then we would bring in folks from the Elections Administrative Office to really provide some insights on the nitty-gritty of how that actually happens. And then that often leads to more conversations and more actions of what can be done to provide some more transparency, to provide some more efficiency, to provide more support in some of those areas, and then also to gain more information. Our cohort from last year really did some nice focus groups and some surveying of different communities to find out what resources they needed related to the elections. And so there's really a great opportunity to dip your toe in the water of what civic engagement can look like for you and for your career, for your future, or just a side passion. And our Rising Stars alumni are very impressive, and we're very proud of them and proud of the work that they've continued to do from then on. I've had a recent conversation with a Rising Star who they said that the program really provided them with the confidence that they could apply to a city position that they were unsure about in the past. Perhaps they didn't have the exact education background. Maybe you studied mathematics instead of poli-sci, but there's still opportunities in the public sector to get involved. And so I think it provides that kind of a gateway for folks to really get involved in their communities. And we hope to expand it, and we hope to really make sure that it continues to have its continues to be a priority for us, because I think that people find it really useful, and it's something, again, that we're really very proud of.
I think, my first experience with the League of Women Voters years ago was through the voters' guides. And, of course, I always had a interest in the elections and in politicians and how that works. So even though I'm not a political science major, I was a history major. But the thing that your experience in bringing out and with the Rising Stars is that you don't have to be aiming for politics or wanting to go into politics to be in the league. Another big thing is you don't have to be a woman, right? It's called the League of Women Voters, and there are plenty of men who are members and have been supportive of the organization too. So it's a much broader organization, I think, than most people realize. And one of the nice things about the Rising Stars is you got exposed to a lot of the different areas that the league gets involved with, the issues that we advocate for, the policies that we're interested in following. Was that surprising to you that that the league really does so much?
Yes. And I think when I had raised my hand at the annual meeting and asked questions, and then kind of immediately got brought into the fray, I was just truly blown away by the amount of work all of these volunteers were doing. And I'm sure that would be a next question, is about the volunteer board and the volunteer committees and how much this organization has accomplished with truly just the dedication of these individuals and these groups who really believe in the mission, believe in what the organization is doing, and they do it for free, and they do it with their extra time on their hands, and they dedicate hours and hours and hours to really move the mission forward, and it's very inspiring.
So this is a good transition point, that you, as the new executive director, having been a volunteer yourself, how do you see the new role? And, it's still being defined. How do you see this new role as kind of wrangling and managing all of those various aspects that the league is involved with here in the Houston area?
Well, truthfully, still getting my arms around it. There is just so much opportunity for the organization, and everybody is so dedicated, and we're all going for the same goal here. And so I really see my role as the executive director to help and to listen and to implement. And those are really the kind of core things that are driving me right now, and I think that will drive me for a long time, is the idea that we really want to help the volunteers to make their jobs a little bit easier so that they don't get burnt out, and so that they feel appreciated, and that their skills are being properly utilized, and that they are really getting the experience that they want out of their volunteering. And then really listening. So having conversations with people to really understand what their needs are, and where they see the growth of the organization, where they've seen the history of it. And we have so much institutional knowledge that I have to absorb and to learn and document, and to make sure that we are really preserving everything that we can for the organization and its history, and then to implement. And that is really what I feel very strongly about, that I bring to the table, is I'm a doer, and I say, let's look at our strategic plan, let's look at these goals, let's look at our mission, and what exactly can we do, and what can I do to help make that happen. And so that's what I'm doing kind of day to day, is looking at my to-do list and seeing what I can do today to accomplish something that will better the mission, better the organization, and really help these long-term volunteers with the efforts that they find important.
What do you see as your next step or your biggest challenge as executive director, as the new executive director for the Houston League of Women Voters?
So the next step is really, what does it mean to build capacity for the organization? And when you look at our workload across the board of directors, across our committee structure, and especially during really heavy election cycles, where is all of the burden and the work? And of course, that burden and that work is fulfilling and wonderful, and people are very excited to do it. But how do we make sure that it's a positive experience for people and that we are doing the most that we can? And part of that will be what type of hiring do we want to do in the future, and how many? Is it full-time? Is it part-time? Is it are they dedicated to voter services? Are they dedicated to marketing, to communications, to development, to admin work? There's kind of a lot of opportunities. And so what I've been really working on is speaking to the volunteers and finding out where they need support, because I am just one person, as is the VP of Voter Services is just one person, but then they have a huge team to support them. And how do we provide some additional help? And that those staff members are really there to do essentially what I'm doing as well, which is to help, to listen, and to implement. And we're taking the leadership from the board members and leadership from the mission, and that's kind of the beacon of light that we're going towards. And so our biggest challenge is really assessing what that looks like, and then of course kind of building that capacity and that team. I've been looking at the organization in a kind of 2-year time frame, where it's 2023 and 2024. Right now, we're at this really nice planning time where we have the time to really hone in on what we need, and then assess and really do some great planning. And then we have the mayoral election, which will be, I think, really full for us, and we're excited about it. And then, of course, you have 2024, which every presidential election is huge for the organization. And so what can we do to prepare our whole entire team? So that's the staff, the volunteers, the board members, the everybody, the organizations, for success. And so that is really kind of the long-term strategy of how do we build it up so that way we have really the best kind of election experience that we can for the organization.
Campbell Shumway, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I think those are some great words. And I want to say, this is a league show, right? It's put on by Houston Media Source TV, but it's for the league. It's by the league. We are the ones who provide the content for this show. So let's have you on more often. We want to hear what the league is doing. And now that we've got a full-time staff member, executive director, you have a lot of insight, and you're going to be talking to so many people. I think there's a lot of information you can bring. So hopefully this won't be the first or the last time that we'll see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank Katie for being on the show with us, even though she couldn't be with us in person. She's here with us in spirit, I'm sure. So Annie, let's talk about some things. And I'm a person of habit. I keep calling it Repast. We've rebranded it. It's not going to be called Repast anymore, partially because I apparently can't say it. So what is it going to look like from now on?
Well, it's going to be May 17th at the Junior League, and it's called the Pioneer Luncheon. And this year's going to focus on women in government in terms of people who are first. And so we are actually reaching out to the potential honorees, but it's going to be May 17th at the Junior League, and we're very excited about the rebranding. It appears that some people had difficulties understanding what repast and associated more with a funeral than associating it with the idea. It's merely the breaking of bread and food as a gathering. Just lunch. And so people, the use of the wording. So it's a very exciting opportunity for people to get together. Last year was so exciting because it was the first event we had in 2 years, so we were really excited about that. In addition to that, the league is having a town hall meeting for all members. If you're not a member, if you go to the league's website and click on the calendar, you can register for it to hear about some of the things that we didn't get to talk about tonight that the league is doing, and also to get to meet the officers, the board of directors and their team, for them to report about their respective areas, and input just from the membership and from the community in terms of what we are doing and having ideas about what we can do in the future. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to Austin on February 27th and 28th to talk to legislators, to talk about issues such as voting and election laws, voting rights and elections, and talk about women health related issues. These are some of the priorities of the league for the state league. And we're going to make appointments and talk to our state legislators who are representative, and quite literally members of the league from all over the state are going to come to Austin to actually talk to their legislators. We just want to have a friendly conversation about things that we're concerned about and hear about what their position is on the issues that we are most concerned about. And we're going to have a webinar and training to make sure, in-person training, to make sure we cover the issues that the state league is advocating, and the voting rights and elections are at the forefront in terms of what the league does in terms of empowering voters. So voting and voting education are those things, and so we want to make sure we stress those things at all times.
And I do think that is an important thing. As you say, we are not partisan. Now, certainly, we all have, as individuals, have our own beliefs. Some of them are on one side, some of them are on others, some of them are here, some of them are there. And it's just to be able to do a couple of things. One, we do want people to vote, and we do support that, because one of the nice things about the citizenship thing is there's all this excitement in yourself. Oh, you're a citizen now. But we go out there, the league members go out there and say, here, let's let the rubber meet the road, right? You are now a citizen. Here is the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. Get yourself registered to vote.
Here, and we're offering this opportunity right here in this space. Jean, one of the funny things I want to say, my father was the first generation born out of the institution of slavery. And so I'm just the second generation. I know you think of it as happening a long time ago, but neither of my two parents, and my mom died in 2021. She was 103 years old. And so with the league turning 103, she voted in every election. She didn't get the right to vote until the 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed. And so in her first presidential contest was 1968. And she voted in every election up until 2020. She voted in every presidential election. So she had a 50-some-year history of voting. So I'm passionate about that, because even though they didn't get a chance to vote in a half a century, that every voice needs to be heard in the political process, and that voting is such a fundamental right and so much part of the democratic system that I am passionate about the league and what we are trying to do in that sphere, in the civic sphere, to get people engaged, to get them interested in participating, because without citizen participation, you can't really say that you're a democratic system of government.
Well, I think that that's a beautiful connection you have to what the league does and why it's so important that you're president right now. Again, as I said earlier, the right person at the right time.
Thank you.
Annie, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and thank you for being the president, and we hope to have you on again before you leave office. And I want to thank Katie for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, Katie.
And we need to keep telling people what we do here at the league. So I want to say good night. Happy Groundhog Day. See, I did get that in there.
You got it in there.
I got it in there. And happy Black History Month from all of us here at the League of Women Voters. I'm Gene Preuss, and thank you, Houston Media Source TV, for hosting Public Affairs Public Access, and thank you from the League. Have a good night.